a billionaire's world shattered by a baby's endless cries, until an unlikely hero steps in from the shadows. What happens next will leave you speechless. Millionaire's baby cried non-stop on the plane until a poor black boy did the unthinkable. The piercing wail cut through the recycled air of first class like a siren, drowning out the gentle hum of the Boeing 787's engines. Harrison Reed II, CEO of Reed Enterprises and self-made billionaire, felt every pair of eyes on the plane boring into the back of his Italian silk suit, as his 6-month-old daughter Olivia's face contorted into an impossible shade of crimson. 3 hours into the transatlantic flight, and the baby hadn't stopped screaming since takeoff. The flight attendant's practiced smile had long since cracked, revealing thinly veiled contempt as she approached, her voice barely audible over the infant's shrieks. "Sir, we've had several complaints. Is there anything else we might try to quiet her down?" Harrison wiped sweat from his brow with a monogrammed handkerchief, desperation etching lines around his eyes. His wife, Catherine, was in Paris on business, and he'd foolishly thought he could handle their daughter alone on the flight to meet her. Now, as passenger after passenger shot daggers his way, he realized how catastrophically wrong he'd been. "I've tried everything," he whispered hoarsely, bouncing Olivia mechanically. "Bottles, toys, walking," his voice cracked with exhaustion. Nearby, an elderly woman tutted loudly, muttering something about people who can't control their children. A businessman in a neighboring seat slammed his laptop shut, jamming noise-canceling headphones over his ears. From the economy section, 17-year-old Marcus Johnson heard the commotion. The heavy curtain separating first class from the rest of the plane couldn't muffle the baby's distress. He shifted uncomfortably in his cramped seat. The threadbare hoodie he'd had since freshman year pulled up over his head. In 12 hours, he would be landing in London for the International Chess Championship, his one shot at a college scholarship. He needed rest before the biggest competition of his life. But as the baby's cries escalated and the atmosphere on the plane grew increasingly hostile, something tugged at Marcus's conscience. The memory of his little sister Zoe, now 7, and how only he could calm her when she was colicky as an infant. His mother had called it the magic touch. Before he could second-guess himself, Marcus unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up, his lanky frame unfolding in the cramped aisle. The flight attendant moving through economy with the beverage cart gave him a sharp look. "Sir, please remain seated. We're experiencing light turbulence." "That baby's been crying for hours," Marcus said, his voice quiet but firm. "I think I might be able to help." The flight attendant's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "First class is off limits unless you're a ticketed passenger for that section." Marcus felt the familiar weight of prejudgment settle on his shoulders as she took in his worn jeans, his public school hoodie, the color of his skin. He'd encountered this look countless times before, in stores where security followed him, in classrooms where teachers expressed surprise at his advanced placement. Status, in chess tournaments where opponents underestimated him until checkmate. "I understand," he said, his voice steady despite the blood rushing in his ears. "But sometimes the solution comes from unexpected places." But before the flight attendant could respond, the curtain to first class was yanked back, revealing a frazzled Harrison Reed holding his screaming daughter awkwardly against his shoulder. The businessman's normally immaculate appearance was in shambles, his bespoke shirt wrinkled and stained, his eyes bloodshot from exhaustion. "Please," he said, his voice breaking as he addressed no one in particular. "I'll pay anyone who can. Get my daughter to stop crying." The moment stretched like taffy, passengers averting their eyes from the powerful man's vulnerability, except for Marcus, who stepped forward, hands slightly raised. "Sir," he said quietly, "I might be able to help your daughter." For a brief moment, something ugly flickered across Harrison's face, doubt, maybe suspicion, as he took in the young black man in economy clothing approaching him, but desperation quickly overrode everything else. 3 hours of non-stop screaming had brought the billionaire to his knees. "You have experience with babies?" Harrison asked, trying to keep the skepticism from his voice. "My little sister had colic," Marcus replied, his calm confidence belying his racing heart. "May I?" He extended his arms toward the wailing infant. Harrison hesitated only a moment before surrendering his daughter. The entire plane seemed to hold its breath And then Marcus did the unthinkable. But hold on. Could one moment on a plane rewrite two destinies forever? Stick around to find out how this shocking encounter unfolds. But to understand how this moment came to be, how a 17-year-old chess prodigy from Southside Chicago ended up holding a billionaire's baby miles above the Atlantic, we need to go back to when the day began, when two lives from entirely different worlds were set on a collision course that would change them both forever. Hey everyone, if you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to subscribe to Whisper Fable and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's continue with our story. 6 hours earlier, Marcus Johnson had stood in front of the bathroom mirror, in his family's small apartment, straightening the collar of his one good shirt. Outside the thin walls, the city was already alive. Car horns, voices, the distant rattle of the L train that would take him to O'Hare International. On the counter lay an envelope containing his boarding pass, passport, and the carefully folded letter from the International Chess Federation that had changed everything. "You got this," he whispered to his reflection, repeating his coach's mantra. His fingers, long and deft from years of moving chess pieces, trembled slightly. Behind him, the bathroom door creaked open and his mother's face appeared, her night shift exhaustion temporarily eclipsed by pride. "My champion," Gloria Johnson said, her voice thick with emotion. She worked doubles as a nurse's aide to keep their family afloat after Marcus's father had been incarcerated 6 years ago. Every tournament entry fee, every chess book, every late-night practice session had been a sacrifice for her. London won't know what hit them. Marcus grinned, though anxiety coiled in his stomach like a spring. "It's just the qualifying rounds, Mom. Don't start planning the victory parade yet." She hummed unconvinced, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from his shoulder. The same way it was just the state championship and just the nationals. She cupped his face in her hands, her eyes serious now. "Listen to me. You belong there. No matter what anyone says or how they look at you, you earned this." From the small living room, 7-year-old Zoe's voice rang out. "Marcus, your chess stuff is ready." His little sister had laid out his travel chess set, notebook, and lucky pencil on the coffee table with ceremonial precision. 20 minutes later, Gloria pressed taxi fare into his palm, despite his protests. "No son of mine is taking public transit to the airport for an international flight," she insisted. "Text me when you land, you hear? London is 6 hours ahead, so don't call in the middle of the night." As the taxi pulled away, Marcus caught a final glimpse of his mother and sister waving from their third-floor window. The familiar tightness gripped his chest, the weight of their expectations, their sacrifices, their love. He couldn't afford to fail. Across town, in a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, Harrison Reed's morning was unfolding very differently. The panoramic windows of his home office framed the city like a living painting as he concluded a video call with his Tokyo team. "The acquisition goes through today. Understood? I don't care what time zone they're in." He ended the call with an impatient tap and swiveled his chair to face his assistant Vivian, who stood with military precision, tablet in hand. "Your itinerary is updated, sir. The jet is fueled and waiting at the private terminal. Mrs. Reed's assistant confirmed she'll meet you at the hotel in Paris tomorrow evening." Harrison nodded absently, his attention already shifting to the next item on his mental checklist. At 45, he'd built Reed Enterprises from a small tech startup in his garage to a global conglomerate. Time was his most precious commodity, each minute meticulously allocated for maximum efficiency. "What about Olivia?" he asked, glancing at his watch. His daughter would normally be with the nanny at this hour, but Marie had called in sick, some family emergency he hadn't bothered to inquire about. Vivian's perfect composure slipped momentarily. "Sir, we've been unable to secure a replacement nanny on such short notice. The agency says no agency personnel on the private jet. It was a security protocol he himself had instituted after a tabloid incident years ago." "What about Catherine's mother?" "Mrs. Ato is still in the Maldives, sir. Unreachable until next week." Harrison suppressed a flare of irritation. His mother-in-law's perpetual vacationing was a source of ongoing tension between him and Catherine. "So, you're telling me I need to fly with Olivia alone?" "Yes, sir, but I've taken the liberty of packing all her essentials and favorite toys." "And the flight attendants on your jet are all trained in—" "We're not taking the jet," Harrison interrupted, a decision crystallizing in his mind. Book us on the commercial United flight to Paris, the one Catherine's on. Vivian blinked, her professional mask momentarily slipping to reveal shock. Commercial, sir? But security protocols? Catherine's already on that flight path, just a day ahead. The sooner we catch up to her, the sooner I'm not dealing with this alone. He straightened his cuffs decisively. First class, obviously, and no announcements. I don't want a circus at the airport. 90 minutes later, Harrison sat in United's first-class lounge, uncomfortably aware of the stares from fellow travelers, who recognized him despite his attempt at a low-key appearance. Olivia squirmed on his lap, fascinated by the platinum credit card he'd given her to play with. His phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "Are you seriously flying commercial with our daughter? You lost your mind?" He typed back quickly. "Calculated. Decision. We'll explain when we see you. Olivia's fine." As if on cue, his daughter cooed and grabbed at his tie with surprising strength. Harrison felt a flicker of the unfamiliar pride that occasionally caught him off guard since becoming a father late in life. At 45, with an empire to run, a child hadn't been in his plans. But Catherine had wanted a family, and Harrison had learned, long ago, that his wife usually got what she wanted. He bounced Olivia gently on his knee, studying her features, Catherine's eyes, his mother's chin. Would she inherit his drive, his relentless ambition, or Catherine's diplomatic charm? He rarely had time for such reflections in the whirlwind of his daily schedule. "Mr. Reed," a lounge attendant approached with a practiced smile, "your flight is boarding now. We'll escort you through the priority lane." Harrison gathered Olivia and her surprisingly extensive paraphernalia. How did something so small require so much equipment? The diaper bag alone weighed more than his laptop case. As the first-class passengers were welcomed aboard, Harrison felt a moment of misgiving. He hadn't flown commercial in nearly a decade. The flight attendant's recognition was immediate, her eyes widening slightly before her training reasserted itself. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Reed. May I help you with anything before takeoff?" "We're fine," he said curtly, settling into the wide seat with Olivia on his lap. He declined champagne, arranged the baby's blanket, and answered 3 urgent emails, one-handed before the announcement to switch off electronic devices. As the plane filled, Harrison remained absorbed in Olivia, oblivious to the boarding economy passengers shuffling past the first-class cabin toward their seats. Among them was Marcus Johnson, who paused briefly at the sight of the famous tech, Billionaire cuddling an infant. The contrast between the man's austere public image and this tender moment with his child was jarring. A flight attendant cleared her throat pointedly, and Marcus continued down the aisle to his seat in economy, stowing his small backpack carefully. The International Chess Championship had covered his flight, but just barely. His seat was in the last row beside the restrooms, with minimal leg room for his lanky frame. As he settled in, Marcus removed his travel chess set from his pocket, a magnetic miniature board his coach had given him for his 15th birthday. He set up the pieces with practiced precision, preparing to review the opening strategies he'd been studying for months. 45 minutes into the flight, as the seatbelt sign switched off and the first round of drinks was being served, Olivia Reed began to fuss. At first, it was just whimpering, barely noticeable above the ambient noise of the cabin. Harrison jiggled her gently, offering a pacifier that she promptly spat out. The whimpering escalated to crying, then full-throated screaming that seemed impossible from something so small. Harrison's expression shifted from mild concern to barely concealed panic as he rifled through the diaper bag, producing toys, bottles, and blankets in rapid succession. Nothing helped. By the 1-hour mark, passengers in first class were exchanging irritated glances. By hour 2, several had complained to the flight attendants. By hour 3, Harrison Reed, a man who commanded boardrooms and brokered billion-dollar deals, was completely undone by his inconsolable daughter. Back in economy, Marcus tried to focus on his chess strategies, but the baby's cries penetrated even his noise-canceling earbuds. He noticed the increasing tension among passengers, the flight attendants' strained expressions as they hurried up and down the aisles. No one seemed to have a solution. As Marcus watched the curtain between classes being yanked back and heard the desperate billionaire's plea, something clicked into place. The same feeling he got during chess matches, when he saw a move others missed, a solution where others saw only problems. And so he found himself standing in the first-class cabin, extending his arms toward the wailing infant while skeptical eyes watched his every move. Harrison Reed reluctantly surrendered his daughter, his expression a complex mixture of doubt and desperate hope. The moment the baby settled into Marcus's arms, something remarkable happened. Marcus cradled Olivia expertly, supporting her head with one hand while he used his other to gently apply pressure to specific points on her back. He began to hum, not a lullaby, but a low rhythmic pattern that vibrated in his chest. His body swayed almost imperceptibly, a subtle rocking motion that seemed to exist outside the turbulence of the plane. "She's probably got gas," Marcus said, quietly, his fingers making small circular motions between the baby's shoulder blades. "My sister was the same way. Sometimes it's not about what they need, it's about how their body feels." Olivia's screams gradually subsided to hiccuping sobs, her tiny fists still clenched, but her face relaxing from its alarming shade of red. Harrison stared in disbelief as Marcus continued his gentle ministrations, speaking to the baby in a low, soothing voice. "There you go. That feels better, doesn't it? All that pressure building up inside, nowhere to go. I bet you tried to tell them, but nobody understood. It's frustrating when no one gets what you're saying." A few more minutes of Marcus's mysterious technique, and Olivia's eyes began to droop. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous. The entire first-class cabin seemed to exhale collectively as the blessed silence settled over them. "How did you—" Harrison began, his voice hushed with amazement. Marcus carefully transferred the now drowsy baby back to her father's arms. "My mom works double shifts. I helped raise my sister from when she was a newborn. Some things you just learn by doing." Harrison adjusted his hold on Olivia, trying to mimic Marcus's technique. "I have a team of experts, pediatricians, child development specialists, and none of them showed me that." A slight smile touched Marcus's lips. "With all due respect, sir, some things you can't learn from experts. You have to learn them from experience." The flight attendant, who had earlier prevented Marcus from entering first class, now hovered uncertainly nearby, witnessing the exchange. Her earlier suspicion had transformed into something like embarrassment. "Man," Harrison said, studying Marcus with new interest, "I believe I owe you a debt of gratitude." He shifted Olivia to one arm and extended his hand. "Harrison Reed." "I know who you are, sir," Marcus replied, shaking the offered hand firmly. "I'm Marcus Johnson." "Well, Marcus Johnson, you just saved everyone on this flight from a collective nervous breakdown, myself included." Harrison gestured to the empty, first-class seat beside his own. "Please join me for the remainder of the flight. I'd like to hear more about these techniques of yours." Marcus hesitated, glancing back toward economy. "My bag." "I'll have it brought up," Harrison said, nodding, to the flight attendant who hurried to comply. As Marcus settled into the leather seat, wider than any chair in his apartment, the contrast between his morning and present circumstance wasn't lost on him. Just hours ago, his mother had scraped together taxi fare to send him off in style. Now, he was sitting in first class beside one of the wealthiest men in America. "So, Marcus," Harrison began, once Olivia was securely sleeping in the bassinet the flight attendant had finally set up. "What brings you on this flight to Europe? College tour? Family vacation?" Marcus straightened slightly. "Chess tournament, sir. The International Youth Championship in London." Harrison's eyebrows rose with genuine surprise. "Chess? You're a player?" "Yes, sir. Internationally ranked junior master." A calculating look entered Harrison's eyes, the same expression he wore when assessing potential acquisitions. "Fascinating. And yet you also possess these rather unusual child care skills." Marcus met the billionaire's gaze directly. "Where I come from, you learn to be good at many things. Specialization is a luxury." Something in his tone caused Harrison to tilt his head, reassessing. South Side Chicago, based on your accent. Competitive chess programs aren't common there, are they? No, sir. My elementary school had one teacher who ran a club after hours. Mr. Caswell, Vietnam vet who learned chess from a Russian prisoner of war. Marcus's fingers absently arranged the cocktail napkin into perfect right angles. He said I had the best tactical mind he'd seen in 30 years of teaching. And this tournament in London? It's significant? Full college scholarship if I place. In the top 3, Marcus said, his voice carefully neutral despite the stakes. Plus potential sponsorship for the Grandmaster track. Harrison nodded slowly, processing this information with the same attention he'd give a business proposal. And your parents? They must be very proud. A shadow crossed Marcus's face. My mom is. She works as a nurse's aide. Double shifts to keep us afloat since my dad's been gone. Gone? Harrison echoed. Then understanding dawned. I see. An uncomfortable silence settled between them, highlighted by the gentle hum of the engines and the soft breathing of the sleeping baby. Mr. Reed, Marcus said finally, I should probably return to my seat. I have some strategies to review before landing. Harrison's hand moved to stop him. Nonsense. The least I can do is offer you a comfortable seat for the duration. Besides, his eyes flickered to his sleeping daughter. I may need your expertise again before we land. As if on cue, the plane hit a pocket of turbulence, causing Olivia to stir. Both men froze, watching anxiously as she shifted in the bassinet, then settled back into sleep. Tell me about chess, Harrison said quietly, his gaze still on his daughter. I've always found it fascinating, but never had the patience to master it. Marcus relaxed slightly, on familiar ground now. It's not really about patience, sir. It's about seeing patterns that others miss, and understanding that every move has consequences that ripple across the entire board. Like business, Harrison mused. And life, Marcus added. Their conversation flowed more easily after that, moving from chess theory to business strategy, from Marcus's tournament preparations to Harrison's early days as an entrepreneur. The vast differences in their backgrounds and experiences seemed less significant. With each passing hour, as they discovered unexpected commonalities in their approaches to problems and challenges, Olivia woke once, fussing slightly, and Marcus demonstrated his techniques again, explaining each movement to an attentive Harrison. It's about pressure points, he said. Same principle as chess, really, understanding the underlying structure, and how different elements connect. Midway through the flight, as they shared the surprisingly decent first-class meal, Harrison posed a question that had clearly been on his mind. You mentioned a scholarship. I assume that means college is otherwise out of reach, Marcus finished. Financially, yes. My grades are good enough for admissions, but even with financial aid, the top programs are expensive, and those are the ones with the best chess teams. Harrison nodded thoughtfully, cutting his steak with precise movements. Which schools are you considering? MIT has shown interest, also Stanford and Northwestern. Marcus shrugged slightly. Depends on how I do in London. All excellent institutions, Harrison said. I dropped out of MIT my sophomore year to start my first company. A hint of wistfulness crept into his voice. Sometimes I wonder how things might have been different if I'd stayed. Would you have built Reed Enterprises? Perhaps not. At least not in the same way. Harrison took a sip of his wine. But there's value in completing what you start, in having a foundation before you build. As the flight progressed, other passengers occasionally glanced their way, curious about the unlikely pair engaged in such intense conversation. The same flight attendant who had earlier blocked Marcus's path now served him with differential attention, having witnessed Harrison's obvious respect for the young man. 4 hours into their conversation, as the plane began its initial descent, over the Atlantic, Harrison asked about Marcus's chess set. Marcus produced the magnetic travel board from his pocket, setting it up on the tray table between them. "Care for a game?" he offered. "Fair warning, I won't throw the match even for a first. Class upgrade." Harrison laughed, a genuine sound rarely heard in his boardrooms. "I wouldn't expect you to, and I wouldn't learn anything if you did." They played quickly, Harrison displaying more skill than he'd initially suggested. Though Marcus identified weaknesses in his strategy within the first few moves, rather than exploiting them immediately, he used the game as a teaching opportunity, explaining principles and tactics as they emerged on the board. "You're not playing to win," Harrison observed after 20 minutes. "I'm playing to teach," Marcus corrected. "Different objective, different strategy." Harrison studied him with renewed interest. "Most people in your position would take the opportunity to beat a billionaire at chess. Ego boost." Marcus captured Harrison's bishop with a precise move. "My coach says playing to your opponent's level teaches you nothing. Neither does crushing someone with less experience." He gestured to the board. "This way, we both learn something." The game concluded with Harrison's inevitable defeat, though more gracefully than it might have been. As they reset the pieces, Olivia began to stir again in her bassinet. "Perfect timing," Harrison said, lifting his daughter carefully. "We'll be landing soon." Marcus watched as the billionaire attempted to apply the soothing techniques he'd demonstrated earlier. Harrison's movements were awkward but earnest, his focus complete as he tried to prevent another crying episode. "Firm, but gentle," Marcus coached quietly. "Babies can sense tension. If you're anxious, she'll pick up on it." Harrison adjusted his approach, and Olivia responded positively, gurgling contentedly in her father's arms. The look of triumph on Harrison's face was not unlike his expression after making a particularly good move during their chess game. "You're a natural teacher, Marcus," he said. "Have you considered that as a career path?" Marcus shook his head. "Not seriously. In my neighborhood, opportunities are limited." "Opportunities can be created," Harrison countered. "That's what entrepreneurs do." As the captain announced their final approach to Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport, Harrison shifted Olivia to his shoulder and regarded Marcus thoughtfully. "I have a proposition for you, if you're willing to hear it." Marcus raised an eyebrow, his expression cautious. "I'm listening." "Your chess tournament in London concludes when?" "Sunday afternoon, assuming I make the finals." "And you're returning to Chicago after that?" Marcus nodded. "I'm proposing a detour," Harrison said. "My wife and I will be in Paris for a week before returning to the States. Given your evident skills with Olivia, I'd like to offer you a temporary position as her caretaker during our stay, fully compensated, of course, at well above market rate." Marcus blinked, taken aback. "You want to hire me as a nanny?" "I prefer childcare consultant," Harrison said with a hint of a smile. "The position includes private accommodation at the Hotel George Five, all expenses covered, and a salary that should significantly supplement your college fund, regardless of the tournament. Outcome." The offer hung in the air between them, unexpected and life-altering in its potential. Marcus's mind raced through calculations and considerations, the extra time away from home, the prestigious hotel, the compensation that could change his family's financial situation overnight. But beneath these practical matters ran a deeper current of recognition. Harrison Reed, a man who could hire anyone in the world, was offering him a position of trust with his most precious possession, his child. "May I have some time to consider it?" Marcus asked, his voice steady despite his internal turmoil. "And I'd need to discuss it with my mother." "Of course." Harrison nodded, reaching into his jacket pocket for a business card. "My private number. Let me know your decision after your tournament." As the plane touched down in Paris, jostling slightly on the runway, Harrison settled Olivia more securely in his arms and turned to Marcus with an expression of genuine gratitude. "Regardless of your decision, I want to thank you, Marcus, not just for helping with Olivia, but for the conversation. It's been illuminating." Marcus nodded, understanding the unspoken layers in the billionaire's words. Sometimes the most valuable moves in chess aren't the ones that capture pieces, Mr. Reed. They're the ones that change the structure of the entire board. As they prepared to disembark, the first-class passengers gathering their belongings, Harrison hesitated. "One more thing, Marcus. Would you be willing to teach me those techniques properly before we part ways? I have a feeling I'll need them." "It would be my pleasure," Marcus replied. And for the first time since boarding the plane in Chicago, he felt the weight of expectation lift from his shoulders. Whatever came next, the chess tournament, Harrison's job offer, his future beyond this unexpected encounter, he had already won something valuable. Recognition, respect, the acknowledgement that wisdom comes in many forms from many sources. And as they walked together through the airport, the billionaire and the chess prodigy from Southside Chicago, something fundamental had shifted between them. A connection formed miles above the Atlantic, bridging worlds that rarely intersected, on the ground below. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to Whisper Fable and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Now, let's continue with our story and see what happens next. Catherine Reed was waiting at the private terminal adjacent to Charles de Gaulle, her sleek silhouette a study in controlled impatience as she checked her watch for the third time in 5 minutes. When the doors finally opened and Harrison appeared, with Olivia, her expression morphed from irritation to confusion at the sight of the tall young man walking beside her husband. "Harrison," she said, air kissing his cheek while taking Olivia into her arms with practiced ease. "I was expecting Marie. Who is this?" Harrison performed the introductions, his tone revealing an unusual level of deference as he explained the circumstances of their meeting. Catherine's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose fractionally as she assessed Marcus, her initial skepticism gradually softening as she noticed her daughter's contentment. "You managed the entire flight without a meltdown?" she asked, bouncing Olivia gently. "That's practically miraculous. Last time we flew with her, the pilot threatened to make an emergency landing." "Marcus has quite the gift," Harrison said. "In fact, I've offered him a position during our Paris stay, pending his decision after his chess tournament in London." Catherine's surprise was evident, but years in corporate and social circles had taught her to adapt quickly. "Chess tournament?" Marcus explained his circumstances with the same quiet confidence he displayed on the plane, watching as Catherine processed this unexpected development. Unlike her husband, whose interest had been primarily pragmatic, Catherine seemed genuinely curious about Marcus's background and achievements. "Junior international master at 17, she mused. "Impressive. Harrison barely manages to concentrate on one chess game without checking his phone." This gentle jab at her husband revealed a warmth beneath Catherine's polished exterior that made Marcus revise his initial impression of her as merely another wealthy socialite. "The car is waiting," Catherine said, glancing at her watch again. "Marcus, can we drop you somewhere? The hotel, perhaps?" "Actually," Harrison interjected, "I've arranged for Marcus to be taken to the train station. His tournament in London starts tomorrow." Marcus nodded gratefully. "The Eurostar leaves in 2 hours. I should have plenty of time." "Well then," Catherine said, shifting Olivia to her other hip. "Good luck with your tournament, and I hope we'll see you again soon." The sincerity in her voice suggested she meant it. As they prepared to part ways, Harrison extended his hand to Marcus. The handshake was firm, businessman to businessman. But there was something else in Harrison's eyes, a recognition, perhaps, of something valuable discovered in an unexpected place. "Remember," Harrison said quietly, "the offer stands regardless of the tournament outcome, though I suspect you'll do quite well." Marcus thanked him, shouldered his backpack, and headed toward the waiting car Harrison had arranged. As he walked away, he heard Olivia begin to fuss in her mother's arms. "Here," Harrison said behind him. "Let me show you something, Catherine. It's all about the pressure points." Marcus smiled to himself as he slid into the sleek town car. Whatever happened in London, something significant had already shifted in his world. A door had opened, revealing possibilities he hadn't imagined when he boarded the plane in Chicago. The Eurostar sped through the French countryside, fields, and villages blurring past the windows as Marcus reviewed his opening strategies one last time. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Landed safely?" He typed back quickly. "In France. Taking train to London now. You won't believe what happened on the flight." As he began composing a longer message explaining the extraordinary encounter, another text appeared on his screen, this one from an unknown number. "This is Harrison Reed. Just wanted to wish you luck tomorrow. Olivia says thanks again." Marcus stared at the message, a smile tugging at his lips. He saved the number to his contacts before replying, "Thank you, sir. Give Olivia my best." After a moment's hesitation, he added, "Remember, firm but gentle pressure and breathe with her, not against her." The response came almost immediately. "Sage advice for business negotiations as well. We'll keep you posted on my progress." By the time the Eurostar pulled into St. Pancras Station, London's evening lights were blinking on across the city. Marcus collected his backpack, double-checking that his chess set and tournament credentials were secure, and stepped onto the platform. The weight of tomorrow's competition settled back onto his shoulders, but it felt different now, balanced by the unexpected validation of the day's events. The tournament hotel was modest compared to the luxury Harrison had offered in Paris, but the lobby buzzed with chess energy. Players from around the world hunched over boards, discussing strategies in multiple languages, sizing up the competition. Marcus checked in, received his contestant packet, and headed to his room to prepare for the morning's first match. As he laid out his tournament clothes, the one good suit his mother had found at a second-hand store and altered to fit him perfectly, his phone buzzed again. This time it was his coach, Frank Desmond, a gruff former champion who'd taken Marcus under his wing 4 years earlier. "Arrive safely. Get some sleep. Remember what we practiced. First-round opponent is Dmitry Vulov, Russian. Junior champion. Strong opening game, but gets impatient in the middle. Make him wait." Marcus replied with a thumbs-up emoji, knowing Coach Desmond's aversion to unnecessary words. Then he set his alarm, laid out his tournament materials, and tried to quiet his mind for sleep. But as he drifted off, it wasn't chess positions that filled his thoughts. It was the image of Harrison Reed, Billionaire CEO, learning to soothe his baby daughter with techniques passed down from Marcus's mother, who had learned them from her mother before her. Knowledge flowing across boundaries of class and race and privilege, connecting 3 generations in an unexpected lineage of wisdom. Morning came too quickly, London's gray dawn filtering through thin hotel curtains as Marcus's alarm chirped insistently. He rose, went through his tournament routine with methodical precision, and headed down to the competition hall where the day's pairings were posted. As his coach had predicted, his first opponent was Dmitry Vulov, the Russian prodigy whose aggressive style had dominated European junior championships for the past 2 years. Marcus studied the tournament bracket, mentally calculating his path to the finals when a familiar name caught his eye. Lawrence Kingsley II, American junior champion from New Hampshire, son of a senator, and Marcus's longtime nemesis on the EBM circuit. Their last encounter at the Nationals had ended in controversy when Lawrence's father had questioned the officiating after Marcus's victory. The implied accusation of favoritism had stung, though the tournament committee had firmly rejected the complaint. Lawrence himself stood at the other end of the hall, surrounded by his entourage, coach, assistant, psychological consultant, all provided by his family's considerable resources. He caught Marcus's eye and smirked, a gesture loaded with the same dismissive confidence he displayed at every previous encounter. Marcus turned away, focusing instead on his own preparation. Coach Desmond appeared at his elbow, coffee in hand, his perpetual scowl firmly in place. "Ignore the Kingsley kid," he growled. "He's in your head only if you let him in. Focus on Vulov, one game at a time." The first round began with ceremonial formality, handshakes, clock settings, the hushed atmosphere of concentrated thought descending over the hall. Dmitry Vulov played as expected, aggressive and confident, pushing for early advantage. Marcus responded with the patient strategy he and Coach Desmond had developed, allowing Vulov to extend himself, then capitalizing on the subtle weaknesses that emerged. 3 hours later, Marcus had his first victory. By evening, he had advanced through the preliminary rounds to secure his place in the next day's quarterfinals. Lawrence Kingsley had also advanced, setting up the possibility of a semi-final confrontation, if both continued their winning streaks. Back in his hotel room that night, Marcus found a message from Harrison. "How did the first day go?" He replied with a brief summary of his matches and standings, surprised by the Billionaire's continued interest. Harrison's response came quickly. "Excellent progress. Olivia has slept through the night twice using your techniques. Catherine thinks I've been replaced by a body double. Keep us posted on tomorrow's matches." The exchange left Marcus smiling as he prepared for bed. The connection formed on the plane seemed to be evolving into something like mentorship, or perhaps even friendship, an outcome he never could have predicted when he boarded in Chicago. The tournament's second day brought increased pressure as the field narrowed. Marcus advanced through his quarterfinal match against a talented player from India, his focus absolute as he maneuvered through a complex middle game to force a resignation at move 37. The victory put him into the semi-finals, and as fate would have it, face-to-face with Lawrence Kingsley II. Their semi-final match drew a crowd, the history between the two players adding drama to the already tense competition. Lawrence arrived flanked by his support team while Marcus sat alone, Coach Desmond having been called away to assist another of his students who had advanced in the junior division. "All by yourself today, Johnson?" Lawrence commented as they set up the board. "No entourage from the south side?" Marcus met his gaze calmly. I think more clearly without distractions." Lawrence's mouth tightened at the implied criticism, but further conversation was cut short by the tournament. Director's arrival to start the clock. The game began with Lawrence playing white, opening with an aggressive Sicilian variation that had become his signature. For nearly 2 hours, they battled across the 64 squares, each move a calculated risk, each position a complex puzzle of possibilities. Lawrence played well, forcing Marcus to defend a series of attacks that tested the limits of his preparation. But in the critical moment when Lawrence overextended in pursuit of a tactical advantage, Marcus found the counterattack that Coach Desmond had drilled into him over countless practice sessions. The endgame was mathematical in its precision, Marcus converting his slight advantage into a winning position with the patience that had become his hallmark. When Lawrence finally tipped over his king in resignation, the crowd's murmur rose to an appreciative buzz. "Good game," Marcus said, extending his hand across the board. Lawrence hesitated before accepting the handshake, his grip just a fraction too tight. "Lucky counter," he muttered. "Not luck," Marcus replied quietly. "Pattern recognition. The same position came up in your match against Petrov last year at the Invitational. You made the same choice then with the same result." Lawrence's eyes widened slightly, surprise replacing resentment for a moment. "You studied my games?" "All of them," Marcus confirmed. "Just as I'm sure you studied mine." A grudging respect flickered across Lawrence's face. "Finals tomorrow, then, against Zimmerman." He nodded toward the adjacent board where the German champion had just secured his own place in the finals. "He's been unstoppable this season." "Everyone's stoppable," Marcus said. "It's just a matter of finding the right move at the right time." As he gathered his materials, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Harrison. Semi-final result? He typed back quickly. Victory. Finals. Tomorrow against Zimmerman. Harrison's response was immediate. Excellent. One more to go. Olivia and I are cheering for you from Paris. The attached photo showed Harrison holding Olivia, both giving thumbs up to the camera, the Eiffel Tower, visible through a window behind them. The casual warmth of the image, so at odds with Harrison Reed's public persona, brought a smile to Marcus's face as he headed back to his hotel. That evening, as he reviewed his notes on Zimmerman's playing style, a call came through from his mother. Her voice was thick with emotion when he told her about making the finals. "I knew it," Gloria said, pride radiating through the connection. "I told everyone at work. My son's going to be a champion." "Just the finals, Mom," Marcus cautioned. The same reflexive modesty he displayed in their bathroom days earlier resurfacing. "Zimmerman's tough," she hummed, unconvinced. "And I suppose you getting to the finals of an international tournament is just another day, too." Marcus laughed, recognizing his own words reflected back at him. "Point taken. How's Zoe?" "Missing. Her brother. Told all her friends you're becoming a chess master in London." "Grandmaster," Marcus corrected automatically. "And that's still years away even if I win tomorrow." "One step at a time," Gloria agreed. "Oh, before I forget, there was a call for you from some foundation about a possible sponsorship. I took down the number." Marcus frowned. "What foundation?" "Reed Foundation for Educational Excellence. Said they were considering you for their chess development program. Wanted to talk after the tournament." Marcus's pulse quickened. The Reed Foundation was Harrison's philanthropic organization, known for its selective but generous support of promising students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Had Harrison already set this in motion regardless of Marcus's decision about the Paris offer? "Did they leave a contact name?" he asked, trying to keep his voice casual. "Someone named Vivian. Very professional sounding. I have her number here somewhere." After finishing the call with his mother, Marcus sat on the edge of his hotel bed, turning this new development over in his mind. The chess scholarship had always been his focus, his path to college and beyond. But Harrison's interest, both the Paris offer and now this potential foundation sponsorship, opened doors he hadn't even known existed. His phone buzzed again with a text from Harrison. "Get some rest. Big day tomorrow. Remember what you told me about Olivia? Tension transfers. Stay calm. Trust your preparation." The parallels between chess strategy and baby-soothing techniques brought a smile to Marcus's face as he prepared for bed. Two worlds that had seemed entirely separate, now connected through unexpected principles. Finals day dawned clear and crisp, London's autumn sunshine streaming through the tournament hall's high windows as spectators filled the viewing area. The match between Marcus and Zimmerman had been promoted as the highlight of the youth championship, the precision-focused German champion versus the intuitive American challenger. As Marcus took his place at the board, he was surprised to see Coach Desmond in the front row of the audience, giving him a gruff nod of encouragement. Beside him sat an unfamiliar woman in a tailored suit, who Marcus somehow knew must be Vivian, Harrison's assistant. Her presence confirmed that the Reed Foundation's interest was real, not just a product of his mother's misunderstanding. The final match was scheduled for 5 hours with potential extensions if needed, a test of endurance as much as skill. Zimmerman played white, opening with a conservative queen's gambit that set the tone for a strategic battle. 2 hours in, the position remained balanced, neither player willing to risk the aggressive moves that might create weaknesses. Marcus found himself drawing on the same patience he described to Harrison, the ability to wait for the right moment, to recognize patterns as they emerged from apparent chaos. In the third hour, Zimmerman began pressing for advantage, perhaps sensing fatigue in his opponent. But Marcus had trained for this, pushing through the mental exhaustion to find clarity in the critical positions. When Zimmerman finally overcommitted to an attack on Marcus's queen side, the counter was there, subtle but devastating. a night sacrifice that led to a winning endgame combination. The tournament hall erupted in applause as Zimmerman extended his hand in resignation, genuine respect in his eyes. "Brilliant sacrifice," he said in accented English. "I did not see it until too late." "Thank you," Marcus replied, the reality of his victory still sinking in. "Your middle game pressure was intense." As the tournament officials prepared for the awards ceremony, Marcus found himself surrounded by well-wishers, reporters, and representatives from chess organizations. Coach Desmond pushed through the crowd to grip his shoulder tightly, the closest thing to a hug the taciturn man ever offered. "Knew you had it in you," he growled. "Perfect execution of our strategy." Before Marcus could respond, Vivian appeared, at his elbow, smartphone in hand. "Congratulations, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Reed would like to speak with you when you have a moment." She handed him the phone, and Harrison's voice came through clearly, despite the noisy hall. "Marcus, spectacular victory. We watched the live stream of the final moves. Even I could appreciate the brilliance of that night sacrifice." "Thank you, sir," Marcus said, still processing the convergence of his chess triumph with this unlikely connection to the billionaire. "I appreciate you taking the time to watch." "Wouldn't have missed it," Harrison replied. "Vivian has information about the Foundation's chess development program. We'd like to discuss it with you in Paris if you're still considering our offer." The awards ceremony was a blur of handshakes, photographs, and the weight of the championship trophy in Marcus's hands. The tournament director announced the scholarship award that had been his primary goal, but it now seemed just one part of a larger picture taking shape around him. Afterward, as the hall cleared and Marcus gathered his belongings, Vivian approached with precise efficiency. "Mr. Reed has arranged for the Eurostar to Paris this evening if that suits your schedule. The Foundation is very interested in discussing your future development beyond the immediate scholarship." Marcus thought of his mother and sister waiting for news in Chicago, of the return flight he'd booked for the following day, of the school he'd be missing if he extended his trip. "Could I make a call first?" he asked. Gloria answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting by the phone. When Marcus told her about his victory, her joyful shout was so loud he had to hold the phone away from his ear. "I knew it!" she exclaimed. "My champion!" When he carefully explained the situation with Harrison Reed, the Paris offer, and now the Foundation's interest, her initial excitement gave way to thoughtful consideration. "This Reed man," she said cautiously, "he's offering you some kind of job with his foundation." "Two things, actually," Marcus clarified. "A short-term position helping with his daughter in Paris this week, and potentially longer-term support through his educational foundation for chess development and college." Gloria was silent for a moment, processing. "And you trust him? This billionaire who suddenly wants to help?" It was a fair question, one Marcus had asked himself repeatedly since the unusual offer on the plane. "I think I do," he said slowly. "He could have just thanked me for helping with his daughter and gone on his way. This feels genuine." Another pause, then Gloria's voice softened. "You've always been a good judge of character, Marcus. Better than me sometimes. If you feel this is right, then you should explore it. What about school? I'd be missing at least another week. For an opportunity like this, they'll understand. I'll talk to your principal." Her tone became gently teasing. "Not every day my son gets offered a position by one of the richest men in America." After ending the call with his mother, Marcus turned to Vivian, who had been waiting patiently nearby. "I'd like to accept Mr. Reed's offer, both offers." Vivian nodded, a small smile breaking through her professional demeanor. "Excellent. The car is waiting whenever you're ready." As the Eurostar carried him back toward Paris that evening, championship, trophy carefully stowed in his backpack, Marcus reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had brought him to this moment. A crying baby on a transatlantic flight, a desperate father at the end of his rope, a young man with skills learned out of necessity rather than choice. His phone buzzed with a message from Harrison. "Congratulations again on your victory. We're looking forward to welcoming you to Paris tomorrow. Catherine has arranged accommodations at the hotel, and Olivia is excited for your chess lessons." Marcus smiled at the joke about the 6-month-old's chess aspirations, typing back, "Thank you, sir. Looking forward to it, though Olivia may need to work on her fine motor skills before mastering the knight move." Harrison's response came quickly. "She's a Reed, ahead of schedule on everything. See you tomorrow, champion." The title felt strange, but not unwelcome. Champion, not just of the chess tournament, but of an opportunity that extended far beyond the 64 squares of a chessboard. As the French countryside blurred past the train windows, Marcus thought about the parallel journeys that had brought him and Harrison Reed to that moment on the plane. The billionaire entrepreneur and the Southside chess prodigy, each carrying their own burdens and expectations. Two lives that would never have intersected, but for a baby's cry and a young man's decision to step forward when no one else would. In chess, they called it a fork, a single move that created multiple threats, forcing the opponent to choose which piece to save and which to sacrifice. But sometimes, rarely, there came a move that changed everything, that transformed the entire structure of the game and created possibilities where none had existed before. Marcus Johnson had made such a move when he stood up from his economy seat to offer help to a desperate father. Harrison Reed had made such a move when he looked past his preconceptions to recognize value in an unexpected source. And now, as the Eurostar sped toward Paris and the next chapter of this unlikely connection, both of their lives had been permanently altered, their respective boards rearranged in ways neither could have anticipated when they boarded a plane in Chicago, with such different destinations in mind. If you've enjoyed this story so far, please subscribe to Whisper Fable and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We're about to reach the conclusion of this incredible journey. The Hotel George V stood like a palace amid the elegant streets of Paris's 8th arrondissement, its limestone facade and Art Deco details speaking to a century of luxury and tradition. As the hotel's sleek town car delivered Marcus from the train station, he felt the familiar weight of being an outsider, the same sensation he'd experienced at his first chess tournaments in wealthy suburbs, at academic competitions where other students arrived in private school uniforms. The doorman greeted him with practiced courtesy, though Marcus didn't miss the subtle assessment in his glance, taking in the well-worn backpack, the careful way Marcus handled his tournament trophy. But any awkwardness dissipated when the hotel manager stepped forward, extending his hand. "Mr. Johnson, welcome to the Four Seasons George V. Mr. Reed has informed us of your arrival. Allow me to escort you to your accommodations." The accommodations proved to be a suite larger than his family's entire apartment, with tall windows overlooking a courtyard garden. Fresh flowers adorned marble-top tables, and a welcome basket contained an assortment of French delicacies alongside a handwritten note from Catherine Reed. "Congratulations on your victory. We look forward to seeing you at breakfast tomorrow. Rest well." Marcus set down his backpack, placed his trophy carefully on the writing desk, and stood motionless in the center of the suite, momentarily overwhelmed by the stark contrast between his morning in the modest London hotel and this evening in Parisian luxury. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Landed safely in Paris?" He sent back a photo of the suite with the caption, "Safe and sound. Rooms bigger than our apartment. Love you." Her response made him smile. "Don't get too used to it. But enjoy every minute. You've earned it." Had he earned it? The question lingered as he explored the suite, running his fingers over fine fabrics and furniture that probably cost more than his mother made in a year. His chess victory had earned him the scholarship. That felt clear and legitimate. But this, the luxury, the connection to the Reed family, the sudden interest of a billionaire's foundation, all stemmed from a simple act of kindness on a plane. Was that something to be earned or merely the right thing that anyone should have done? Morning brought answers, or at least the beginning of them, when Marcus joined the Reed family for breakfast in their penthouse suite. Harrison greeted him with a warmth that seemed to genuinely surprise Catherine, who watched their interaction with thoughtful interest. Olivia, strapped into a high chair, cooed and waved her arms at the sight of Marcus. "She remembers you," Catherine remarked, sipping her coffee. "That's remarkable given how young she is." "Babies are more perceptive than we give them credit." "For?" Marcus replied, accepting a cup of coffee from the suite's butler. "They pick up on energy and intention, not just faces and voices." Harrison nodded, his expression serious. "That's precisely what I wanted to discuss with you, Marcus. This perception you have, it's unusual." Over breakfast, Harrison outlined his proposal in greater detail. The short-term position would involve Marcus staying in Paris for the week, helping with Olivia while Harrison and Catherine attended a series of business functions and charitable events. The longer-term opportunity through the Reed Foundation would provide not just financial support for college, but mentorship, internship placements, and development of what Harrison called Marcus's unique interpersonal intelligence. "I've built my career on recognizing talent in unexpected places," Harrison explained, cutting his omelet with precise movements. "What you demonstrated on that plane wasn't just a knack for childcare. It was emotional intelligence, problem-solving under pressure, and the ability to bridge worlds that rarely connect. Those are rare skills, Marcus. Skills my foundation and my company value highly." Catherine leaned forward, her initial reserve now replaced with genuine engagement. "What Harrison is trying to say in his typically roundabout business fashion is that we'd like to invest in your future, beyond chess, beyond college, though those remain important components." Marcus set down his coffee cup carefully, processing their words. "May I ask why? I appreciate the opportunity, but there must be thousands of talented young people you could support." Harrison and Catherine exchanged a glance that contained an entire conversation. It was Catherine who finally answered. "Frankly, Marcus, what you did on that plane forced us to confront some uncomfortable truths about our assumptions, about how we've structured our lives to insulate ourselves from certain realities. What my wife is diplomatically trying to express," Harrison added, "is that we've built walls around our world, walls that keep out perspectives and wisdom we clearly need." He gestured toward Olivia, who was happily mashing banana into her high chair tray. "We have experts and consultants for everything related to our daughter, yet none of them could do what you did instinctively." "That's not entirely fair," Marcus said, surprising himself by defending the unknown experts. "They probably didn't have the specific experience I had with my sister. Different backgrounds lead to different kinds of knowledge." "Precisely," Catherine said, her expression approving. "And that's why diversity of experience and perspective matters, not just as some corporate talking point, but in practical, everyday ways." Harrison nodded, his gaze thoughtful as it rested on Marcus. "The foundation program I'm proposing isn't charity, Marcus. It's an investment. In you, certainly, but also in what you represent, the talent and potential that exists, beyond the narrow pipelines traditional institutions recognize." As the conversation continued, Marcus began to understand that what had started as a chance encounter on a plane had evolved into something more significant for the Reed family, a catalyst for reassessing their approach to privilege, opportunity, and the invisible barriers that separated their world from his. The week in Paris unfolded with a rhythm that balanced Marcus's responsibilities to Olivia with opportunities to explore the city and continue his chess studies. Harrison had arranged for him to meet with a French grandmaster for several coaching sessions, while Catherine ensured he experienced cultural highlights beyond the typical tourist attractions. Caring for Olivia proved both rewarding and illuminating. The baby responded to him with consistent delight, and Marcus found himself teaching both Harrison and Catherine the techniques his mother had passed down, not just the physical methods of soothing and comfort, but the underlying philosophy of respect and attention. You listen to her, Catherine observed one evening as she watched Marcus calm Olivia after a particularly fussy day. Not just to her cries, but to what she's trying to communicate before she gets upset. Marcus nodded, gently working pressure, points along Olivia's tiny spine. My mom calls it speaking baby. It's about recognizing patterns and signals before they escalate, kind of like chess, seeing the position developing before the critical moment arrives. Harrison, who had been observing from the doorway, entered the nursery with uncharacteristic hesitation. Would you show me again? I've been practicing, but I can't seem to get it right. The vulnerability in the billionaire's request struck Marcus deeply. Here was one of the most powerful men in the business world, accustomed to commanding rooms and making decisions affecting thousands of lives, asking for guidance from a 17-year-old from Southside Chicago. Of course, Marcus said, carefully transferring Olivia to her father's arms. It's all about confidence in your movements. Babies sense uncertainty immediately. As he guided Harrison's hands, demonstrating the proper pressure and rhythm, Marcus reflected on how this moment inverted the traditional power dynamics between them. In this room, with this specific knowledge, he was the authority, his experience valued precisely because it came from outside Harrison's usual spheres of influence. By the end of the week, as Marcus prepared to return to Chicago, the relationship between him and the Reed family had evolved into something neither side could have anticipated. Harrison and Catherine had come to rely on his insights about Olivia, while Marcus had gained a new perspective on the world of privilege and power the Reeds inhabited, its advantages and limitations, its insulations and blind spots. On his final evening in Paris, Harrison invited Marcus to join him for a walk along the Seine. As they strolled past the pont of street lamps reflecting in the dark water, Harrison broached the subject they'd both been circling. The Foundation's offer remains open, he said. Full support through college, mentorship, internships at Reed Enterprises if you're interested. No strings attached, regardless of your career path. Marcus nodded, watching a tour boat glide beneath the bridge, its lights creating ripples of gold on the water's surface. It's an incredible opportunity, one that could change everything for me and my family. But, Harrison prompted, hearing the unspoken reservation in Marcus's tone. But I need to be sure I'm accepting it for the right reasons, Marcus said carefully. That it's not just compensation for helping with Olivia, or worse, some kind of charity case that makes you feel better about yourself. Harrison stopped walking, turning to face Marcus directly. In the lamplight, the lines of privilege and power that usually defined the billionaire's face seemed softened, revealing the human complexity beneath. Let me be clear, Marcus. What I'm offering isn't charity or compensation. It's recognition of exceptional talent and character. The same recognition I'd give to any promising young person I encountered, regardless of circumstances. He paused, choosing his next words with care. The difference is that our paths would never have crossed without that flight. The worlds we inhabit are separated by more than just economic barriers. They're separated by systems designed to keep them distinct. Marcus considered this, understanding the truth in Harrison's words. So, this is about disrupting those systems. A smile touched Harrison's lips. In a small way, yes. One connection at a time, one recognized talent at a time. He gestured toward the city lights surrounding them. The greatest waste in our society is human potential left undeveloped because of artificial barriers. My foundation can't fix the entire system, but it can build bridges where opportunities arise. They resumed walking, silence settling between them as Marcus weighed the offer against his concerns about independence, about earned versus granted opportunity, about the complex dynamics of privilege and assistance. There's something else you should know, Harrison said eventually. Something Catherine and I discussed after watching you with Olivia this week. We're establishing a new initiative through the Foundation, a program to identify and develop emotional intelligence and caregiving skills in underserved communities. Marcus glanced at him, surprised. Based on what you showed us, Harrison confirmed. The wisdom passed down through families like yours, the practical knowledge that exists outside formal education systems. We want to create pathways for that wisdom to be recognized, valued, and shared more widely. The magnitude of this development, a Billionaire's foundation launching an initiative inspired by the skills Marcus's mother had taught him, left him momentarily speechless. The program would benefit from your input, Harrison continued. Not now, perhaps, but after college, when you've had time to develop your own path and perspective. As they completed their circuit along the river and turned back toward the hotel, Marcus felt the pieces of his decision falling into place like a well-executed chess endgame. The Foundation's support would open doors without determining which ones he chose to walk through. The connection to the Reed family would become part of his story without defining it entirely. I'd be honored to accept the Foundation's support, he said finally, and to contribute to the new initiative when the time comes. Harrison extended his hand, and they shook. No longer the desperate father and helpful stranger from the plane, but two individuals recognizing value in each other across the divides that might otherwise have kept them apart. The following morning, as Marcus prepared to depart for the airport, Catherine presented him with a small box elegantly wrapped in silver paper. A token of our appreciation, she said, though it hardly seems adequate. Inside was a chess set unlike any Marcus had seen, pieces crafted from carved jade and rose quartz, the board inlaid with mother-of-pearl and ebony. An accompanying card bore a handwritten note. For the champion who showed us that the most valuable moves are the ones that change the entire board. With gratitude, Harrison, Catherine, and Olivia Reed. As the hotel's car carried him toward Charles de Gaulle Airport, Marcus's phone buzzed with messages from his mother and sister, eager for his return, from his chess coach, already planning for the next tournament, from classmates curious about his international adventure, and one final text from Harrison Reed. Safe travels, Marcus. Remember that some connections, once formed, transcend the circumstances of their beginning. This is just the first move in what I hope will be a long and meaningful game. Looking out at the Paris streets slipping past his window, Marcus reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had begun with a baby's cry on a plane and culminated in this moment of transition, returning to his life in Chicago, but with new possibilities, new connections, new understanding of his own value and potential. In chess, the most powerful move isn't always the most obvious or aggressive. Sometimes it's the quiet repositioning that changes the entire structure of the game, opening pathways that weren't visible before, creating connections between previously isolated pieces, transforming the board in ways that ripple through every subsequent decision. On a transatlantic flight, a young man from Southside Chicago had made such a move when he offered help to a desperate father and his crying baby. The ripple effects of that choice had altered not just his own trajectory, but the perspectives and priorities of a powerful family, creating possibilities that extended far beyond any single act of kindness. As the plane lifted off from Paris, carrying Marcus back toward the familiar landmarks and challenges of home, he understood that the true value of the connection formed with the Reed family lay not in the material support or opportunities offered, but in the recognition of worth across the boundaries that too often separated potential from opportunity, wisdom from power, one human experience from another. The greatest moves in chess, as in life, are those that build bridges rather than walls, that recognize value in unexpected places and create pathways for that value to transform the entire board. In reaching across the aisle of that first-class plane, Marcus Johnson had made just such a move. And in the game of life, unlike chess, such moves continue to resonate long after the final piece is played. Thank you so much for watching our story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to Whisper Fable and share your thoughts in the comments below. Where are you watching from? We'd love to know. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our next story.